It was a warm May night in New York City, and the streets were full of ordinary chaos. But tonight wasn't just any night for the Rosenbergs in Apartment 6E. Tonight was the eve of David's bar mitzvah. Family members had come from all the corners of the earth to join in celebration for David, as tomorrow he would become a man in the Jewish religion. "David, are you sure you don't want to practice with me one more time?" "Very sure. I can't wait for this all to be over. I'm exhausted and I don't care about this stuff anyway," said David to his father Joshua. That was not the response Joshua had anticipated. Joshua stopped in his tracks. After all of the hard work and time he'd put in to help his son learn how to read and chant his Hebrew verses, he realized it meant nothing to his son. It led him to think, was his son ready to become a bar mitzvah? Does he understand what it actually means to be Jewish and why it should matter? These thoughts were overwhelming and upsetting. He was irritated by the fact that his son would rather spend more time on the subway than in temple, or more time playing video games than studying the Torah. "Come here, Dave. I want to show you something, and I want you to see this before the morning." "No way! Is that you?" David asked his dad, laughing. Yes. That's me in Israel, the day I met your mother. We fell in love that day. Israel brought us together. I want to play you a song that might help you better understand why your bar mitzvah should be important to you. You ready to listen?" "Sure, I guess," said the boy. "You know, this song isn't just a song, but it's actually a combination of a melody and a poem that have been morphed together to form one piece. I know you don't find our Jewish history so interesting, but it is important to hear, especially before your bar mitzvah. Oh, and it's also Israel's national anthem," explained the father. The Hatikvah itself embodies the story of the Jewish struggle and the Zionist mission. You'll be able to hear a compilation of different tunes, words, and ideas that all come together with one similar mission, which is to carry on hope for the Jewish people. Before the Hatikvah and the Tikvateinu were even ideas, a melody was created and permeated through the 17th century culture of Europe. In English, we call this melody the cart with oxen. David, like the writer of this melody is from Eastern Europe, our family comes from there as well. We come from Hungary. Because we are Jewish, our ancestors were forced out of Eastern Europe later on, and as the melody got picked up other places, so did Judaism. This melody is actually inspired by a song from the play De Maldau in Spain. That's another part of our history, son, where the Jews were forced to convert to Christianity or be killed. Most of the Jews were expelled from Spain at that time, and even though this was an extremely hard part of our history, what I'm trying to tell you is that the hope of our people has allowed us to survive these atrocities. David looked inquisitively at his father. "But Dad, how does this have anything to do with my bar mitzvah or even Israel?" "Oh, yes, that's a good question. Now, let your mind go away from this 17th century melody and let me tell you about a poem by Naftali Herz Imber. It's called Tikvateinu, or Our Hope, and will help you better understand why all of this matters. Now, Imber was an Austro-Hungarian Jew just like us, and while he was living in Europe, he began to work on this poem. Remember how I told you Jews were persecuted in Spain? It didn't end there, unfortunately, son. And with violence and anti-Semitism spreading throughout Europe in the 1800s, the Zionist movement was born. Imber himself was a Zionist who believed that the Jewish people have the right to a homeland in Palestine. Joshua glanced at his son. He was paying attention. He went on. That, and the horrible living conditions in Eastern Europe, Zionism gained momentum, and Imber, along with others, made Aliyah to the land of Israel. I guess that is kind of cool, Dad. Thanks. Oh, I'm not done yet. By the time the author moved to Israel, other people picked up his words. People were drawn to the stanzas because they were full of romantic and uplifting language. He wrote 9 stanzas that became very popular, but were not all used in the Hatikvah. "So what happened then?" David asked. "Well, my boy, then another Jew made Aliyah to Israel, named Samuel Cohen. He was the musician inspired by that song I told you about before with the oxen. He used that tune as a guide and adapted it to fit the verses of Tikvateinu. That is how we get the Hatikvah in the late 1800s. David looked carefully at his father. Joshua continued. It's important to understand, David, that the Jewish people were still not done fighting against anti-Semitism and violence. Even in the land of Israel, there was chaos. When the Jewish community saw themselves as a unified and structured nation, things started to change. I remember Grandpa talking about Israel before it became a state in 1948. He was telling me that even though the Hatikvah was the Song of Israel, it was unofficial because the government didn't recognize it. So many important political figures disliked the Hatikvah, including Theodor Herzl, because the Oxen song was not a Jewish melody, and Imber was a very disrespected alcoholic. But that doesn't matter. Dad, I really should rest before— Wait a second, son, Joshua said. Let me finish my point. What I want you to understand is that the Hatikvah has been a symbol of hope for Jewish people for longer than you think, and that hope has held us together and led us to establish our own nation. Son, when you walk up to the Bima tomorrow, I want you to remember our history as a people and be hopeful yourself. We are strong, David, and you should be proud to be Jewish.